Hello friends, and welcome to The Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. Friends, if you are a returning visitor, you probably recognize that this is my series in which I use tarot and oracle cards to explore topics related to living an intentional life. I'm starting up the series again after a 50-day deep dive into a beautiful, expansive deck called The Tarot of the Holy Light by Payne-Towler. And I love that deck so much I can't put it aside quite yet. So, what have I done? I got a suggestion from the creator of the deck, from Christine Payne-Towler, and she recommended that I take a look at the Ace of Swords from that deck, and that it might help inspire a spread for my series or for the future. And I did that. And I see a few possible spreads from that card, but I chose one. And I've laid it out, and I may have bitten off more than I can chew. We'll have to see. Let me show you the spread right now. Isn't that a beautiful, amazing spread? Can you see how it may have been inspired by the Ace of Swords? Well, friends, it was inspired by the Ace of Swords. And since this is a brand new spread that no one has seen, it takes some explanation. So, in order to explain this as clearly as I possibly can, in order to demonstrate where this spread originated from, let me show you the Ace of Swords from Christine Payne-Towler's The Tarot of the Holy Light. Take a look. What you just saw was this card. So, in the spread, you probably noticed there were 3 lines of tarot cards, vertical lines. So the central vertical line represents this sword piercing up into the sky. And those cards were from the Tarot of the Holy Light. Makes sense, right? Now, you'll notice that the sword was piercing one planet in the center, but there are 3 planets on either side of the sword. So, one set of tarot cards and another set of tarot cards. Now, you'll notice at the top of these 2 sets of celestial lights, one is the sun, one is the moon. So, on the left side of the spread, topped by the sun, these are the conscious elements of the spread. On the right side of the spread, topped by the moon, these 3 cards were the unconscious elements of the spread. And then you also noticed that there are 2 heads to this. What is this? It's an eagle, a 2-headed eagle. There were 2 oracle cards in the spread, one for each one of these heads. And these heads are giving us advice that we probably want to bring together. So there will be advice for the sun side, the conscious side, and advice for the moon side, the unconscious side. And we will want to bring those together. Does that make sense? That's how I came up with this spread for this series, for at least this lunar cycle. Let's see how this works out. So friends, I've got this all laid out in front of me. And where should we begin? I think we should begin at the sword. Let's begin with the cards from the Tarot of the Holy Light, and let me show them to you right now. If you didn't notice the first time, I'm sure you really noticed this time that the Ace of Swords appeared in this spread. I swear, I did not look for it as a significator. It appeared all on its own. but it appeared in reverse, right? So at the top, we had the Knight of Swords in reverse, then we had the Seven of Wands upright, and then we had, sorry, we had the Ace of Swords below in reverse, two reverse and one upright. This deck, the Tarot of the Holy Light, is designed to be read with reversals. So I shuffle reversals into the deck. Every time I shuffle the deck, I turn half of it around and I shuffle it. I turn half it around and I shuffle it. So reversed cards are natural for this deck. And so how am I going to read this for you? I'm going to start, I believe, with the central card. I think that is the main message, the upright Seven of Wands. All of these cards are beautiful. They're lush, they're stunning. I highly recommend getting this deck and studying it and investing the time to learn this deck, because it's different from the Rider-Waite-Smith, the Thoth, all of the Golden Dawn-based decks that are everywhere in the world now. This is based on the Continental Tarot. And this is a beautiful, beautiful exploration of the Continental Tarot Esoterica created by Christine Payne-Towler. I love this deck. Okay, so we're starting with the Seven of Wands, upright. And what do we see? We see fire. We see the wands rising out of very intense fire, and we can see a path going through, or leading into the distance. So we imagine that there's this path that's going perhaps into the darkness, and that path is being blocked by the Seven Wands and this raging fire in front of it. But you can also see that there are flowers growing, the trees behind are lush and alive. It's a beautiful card, and what does this indicate for us? Those wands are kind of like a gate of fears, the edges of our known capacities. When we're living the intentional life, we sometimes, maybe more often than sometimes, but at least sometimes, run up against that sense of moving into this uncomfortable, unsure territory of I've never quite been here before. As we evolve, as we expand, as we grow as people, as we live our intentional lives, as we ride the powerful current of our intention, which carries us forward naturally. The more open we are to it, the more powerfully and more quickly we will move with it. However, we move into the unknown, and sometimes that unknown is so unknown that we start to get uncomfortable. Yeah? And our fears start to arise. I've never done this before. I've never been here before. Who are these people? We start to rethink our expectations. And we actually may want to rethink our expectations or our strategies for moving forward. We may want to find a way to either rise above this group of wands or find a new direction. This is not an impenetrable wall, but it does take a little bit of thought, or it does take a little bit of opening to new possibilities to move around it. Now, those fears, when they arise, they don't just go away. We need to acknowledge them. We want to acknowledge them, and we want to find our way around them. Now, those fears can sometimes be that burning fire down there, right? They rise up from above. They sometimes have that kind of intensity. So we want to find a way to overcome or reroute our direction. Like water. What does water do when it encounters a barrier like this? It either finds a way over or around. And that's the direction our intention is going to move us once our own personal fears burst up and start to block our way. Now, this is also a reminder that, now, I don't know if you know, the cards are so small. I'm sorry. I'm still trying to figure out a way to show, if maybe I should show them horizontal even though they're vertical in the spread. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Would it mess with your mind if the cards were horizontal, even though in the spread they're vertical? If they're horizontal, I can show them to you much more in a much more close-up view. Let me know. So, if you look at the bottom of the card, this is Mars, Sagittarius ruled by Mars. Yeah, Mars in Sagittarius. So Mars is over the middle section of Sagittarius in this card, in this deck. Now remember, this is different from the Golden Dawn tradition. And this reminds us that only those who are bold, only those who are unflappable will keep their focus and win the day. Now, it's not so much of the driving willpower of a bulldozer. It's cleverness. It's focus. It's not being knocked about by the tides as we flow with our current of intention. We want to continuously question our givens. We want to question what we think we are assuming about the course of our intention. Because our assumptions, when they diverge from the actual course of our intention, can sometimes knock us off because we get disoriented. We think we should be going this way, but intention is leading us in a different direction. And intention knows the way we want to go. But it's contrary or different from, or separate from, or not as apparently direct as we think it should be. And so that's where we may want to reconsider what we have assumed about the direction we're going in. Constantly question our givens. And if we're clever, we can, and we're open to intention, we will have that edge, we'll have that power to lift us up over this barrier. And we also remember that sometimes plans go astray. Sometimes plan A, like I said, our expectation is going this way, but intention is moving us this way. Sometimes we need to move into plan B. This card gives us all of that. This card reminds us of all of that. Sagittarius is about planning, right? Shooting in a direction. And sometimes that direction is blocked. Not necessarily because we're wrong, but because we can't know everything. We do not have all of the knowledge that the eternal selves that we are have. And so, with the knowledge we have, we think we want to go this way. We shoot in this direction, but the truth is, it's not really that direction, it's this direction. So, we can actually be thankful for the Seven of Wands when it comes up. However, when it does come up, we sometimes have reactions, such as, let's move to below. The Ace of Wands, the Ace of Swords reversed. Yeah? The core of this is a passion thing, a Wands thing, but our reactions are mental things, are swords things. The Ace of Swords in upright, it's penetrating. I've mentioned this already. Penetrating beyond the material plane, penetrating into the astral level when it's upright. It's the Empyrean. It's the going beyond the orbit of Saturn. And when looking at this upright, I've decided for myself that you notice that there's the sun, there's the moon, and then there are what could be paired planets here, paired celestial lights, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Mercury. But then there's this one which is in the center, but also separate, pierced by the sword, which made me think, which one is the one that is not really paired? That is Saturn. So I've decided for myself that this one here is Saturn. And I may be right, I may be wrong, I may be thinking differently from the Creator, I may be thinking similarly to her. But for me, I've decided that this is Saturn. We've got the sun and the moon. So Mars and Venus and Jupiter and Mercury are arranged around these. and which reminds me a little bit of the tree of life. Now we've got the central path, we've got the path of mercy, and the path of harshness. Of yeah, okay. Let's stick with those words just for brevity. So, why was I saying all of that? Because for me, the sword here is piercing Saturn. Yeah, the sword here goes beyond the orbit of Saturn, beyond the farthest reaches of the known classical planets, the celestial lights. It pierces and draws together into a single thought, into a single seed of thought. Can you see how that can be possible? Piercing and drawing together at the same time. So, in reverse, this card refers to sacrifices. It could be challenges. It could be a critical environment. Now remember, we just said challenges. The challenges of this Seven of Wands. This could be a response to that. Those challenges, that feeling of being in an unfamiliar environment and starting to become critical. Critical of self, critical of the plans we've made. And it could be critical in a negative way. There's a way to evaluate the plans we've made and work our way around it. And then there's the negative kind of criticism that a lot of us experience, I know I do, when things don't seem to be working out the way we think they should be working out. That inner critic that cuts us down and cuts down our plans. Rather than going for the workaround, just starts hacking at things. Does that make sense? It's also a reminder that we want to discipline our minds. We want to narrow our focus and keep our eyes on the prize. We seem to see this barrier in front of us, but that prize is still out there. That our intention is still moving in the direction of our creations, our manifestations. So we want to keep our eyes on that. And if we do, we can have victory over distraction, over self-division. But only after scrupulous self-examination. We have to look within to see why we've gotten split up, why we've split, why our minds have divided, why we've started to break apart when we have confronted this apparent obstacle. One thing to keep in mind, we can go forward, we can bring it back together, but some self-examination is required to move around this barrier. And remember this guy, let me show him to you upright. This guy, the upright Knight of Swords. This guy is a guy, gal, non-gendered human being. All of us have the Knight of Swords within us. And this knight is armed and dangerous. Mentally, armed and dangerous, locked and loaded perhaps, but also witty, clever, the humorist of the pack. We've got our own personal sense of humor. We've got our own wit. We've got that clever individual within us. And he's usually expansive. He's usually experimental. Why? Because he is Gemini in this pack. He, she, it, they are Gemini in this pack. And when upright, Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury into education and adventures. Yeah? When he's reversed, what do we get? And this can be that reactionary part of us when we come up against this obstacle that we haven't planned for or haven't expected, or even if we expected, we really wished wouldn't have been there. This knight represents that part of us that becomes easily slighted. How dare this barrier appear before me? Who allowed this to happen? Yeah? We sometimes nurse hostile and confrontational attitudes that can reveal themselves when we feel blocked. Sometimes we start looking around for someone else to blame. Have you ever done that? I do. Whose fault is this? Whose fault is this? Who made this happen? And even if we don't do it directly, sometimes some of us start to bait people so that we can get them to do things that we can be critical of and judge and take offense at. Part of virtue signaling, which is very common these days, we find ways to bait people into doing or saying things that we can enjoy taking offense at. That's the Knight of Swords reversed, sometimes. And that can be a reaction to finding that Seven of Wands in our path. But we know when we do this, if we move into this Knight of Swords, which we sometimes do, that we have closed ourselves off from the power of intention. We've closed ourselves off from having access to this powerful force which is moving us forward, around the barrier, around or over the obstacle, if we allow ourselves to move with it. If we examine self to find why our mind has split, why has this thing that is before us become a Seven of Wands obstacle? Without blaming self, it's just an indication that, okay, I need to figure me out a little bit more so that I can open back up, so that I can spread my wings, or I can spread my, petals like a lotus blossom. I can open like a lotus blossom and flow with the water. Although, of course, lotus blossoms don't really flow with water. They usually just kind of stay there in ponds, but you get my meaning. Yeah? The more open we are, like a fully bloomed lotus blossom, the more access we have to the powerful flow of intention. Makes sense, right? Okay, so that was the three cards in the center. Let's move to the sun side of the spread. Let's move to our conscious arena. Take a look. In the conscious arena, we had three cards from the Light Seekers Tarot. Yeah? I decided to put the Light Seekers... No, I'm sorry. This is the Textured Tarot. What am I saying? This is the Textured Tarot. I decided to use the Textured Tarot for the sun side of the spread. And you saw at the top was the Seven of Swords. I'm sorry, Seven of Swords. Right below that, the Three of Wands, and then the Devil. Now we've got in this spread, I'm looking at the whole spread before me. We've got a lot of swords. We've got a lot of wands. We've got one pentacle, but no cups. Two majors. So, interestingly, there's not a lot of water in this card, except perhaps in the star card, which is in the moon side. It's not exactly a cups card, but there is a lot of water there. But except for that one kind of hint of water, we've got mostly fire and air and a little bit of material pentacles. So that's interesting, right? That's something to consider. I mean, there's a lot of emotional reaction here, but not a lot of emotional expression in the cards. So, how are we going to look at these three cards from the Textured Tarot? Let's start with the bottom card, with the Devil card here, which is right here in my hand. Yeah, the Devil card. I love this set of images. I'm usually not attracted to not cloisonne. We call them when we paste things on top of things. What kind of art is this? It is called, okay, I'll put the word down here at the bottom. This kind of art doesn't usually draw me, doesn't really excite me usually, but in this deck, I like it. And I described it when I did my walkthrough of this deck. I mentioned that a little bit. I love this card, however. It reminds me a little bit of the Tilwick Tarot, but I love this card for the devil. The devil, temptation, right? Sexuality, seduction. Those are possible meanings of the devil, and those are meanings that I tend to like to use. But usually we think of things like attachment, addiction, right? Also restriction and bondage. Yeah, these two figures here are chained to the devil. It's interesting that I love these candles down here at the bottom. We got that potential fire here in this devil card. So what does this mean for me, for us in this spread? Remember, we were just looking at that wall of wands, right? That obstacle. That obstacle could be, and our difficulty in moving around it, our difficulty in just, oh, there it is, and let's move around. Our difficulty in doing that is probably because of some kind of bondage, some kind of attachment to either a thought pattern or a behavior pattern, which indicates this, right? That Seven of Wands could be as large and fiery as it is because of this card, because of our attachments, because of our self-restrictions and our bondage to ideas and beliefs and perhaps lack mentality. So this devil, I think, resonates with that Seven of Wands card greatly. And then if we move above it, the Seven of Swords is a card that could be a problem, could be a solution. It depends on how we read the Seven of Swords. Now, you know that in most RWS decks, Smith-Waite decks, Pamela Coleman Smith's art, what do we see? We see a person, usually male presenting, carrying like 5 swords away from a group of tents. And there are 2 swords left behind, and often we think of this card as getting away from something, deception, stealing something that's not ours. So sometimes our reaction to this kind of a block, our bondage, our feeling restricted, is to take what we think we should have, to steal or to deceive and get our way by hook or by crook, in a very negative way. We see somebody else has what we have, what we want, at least what we believe that we want, and sometimes we figure a way to take it away from them, or to try to take it away from them. Because we're feeling trapped, we're feeling deprived, we're feeling that barrier of the Seven of Wands. And that is a very detrimental, negative, personally damaging reaction. When we move into that aspect of the Seven of Swords, we're actually stealing from ourselves. We're cutting ourselves off from the power of intention. However, there's this card in between, the Three of Wands, and I think this is our solution. Remember, when we talked about the Seven of Wands, that idea of keeping the eye on the prize, and that is what this card represents for me. Now, the Three of Wands is progress. It's taking an adventurous course. It's being willing to break our routine patterns and take a different course, go into the unknown. Action from intention rather than action from a predetermined plan. Because that predetermined plan is what got us to that Seven of Wands, with the fires raging from below. This is the card of expansion. not just the visual expansion and the planning expansion of the Two of Wands, but this is actual expansion and beginning to move out into the world, beginning to move around perhaps that Seven of Wands. Keeping our eyes on the goal and taking the next step. And it's in doing that that we can then come to this card in its more positive light. Yeah, we're not trying to break down those wands. We're not trying to take something that somebody else has. We're not trying to deceive or connive or cunning our way around things or through things. But we can go our own way. Yeah, we can act strategically. We can follow our impulses. We can follow our sense of spontaneity, which is what this card can present in its positive sense to me. Yeah, it's going our own way, not following the path that other people have set, not following the path that we have planned for ourselves, but doing something spontaneous, feeling an intention or an impulse to do something different and then doing that. And those impulses, when do we get those impulses? When we're feeling trapped, when we're feeling bound? Never. When we're feeling open and expansive and our sights are clear, we have our eye on the prize, not on what we perceive as the barrier, but on the prize. And then we'll have that impulse to move, and that impulse to move is given to us by the eternal natures that we are and by the powerful force of intention. And then we can move naturally, either over or around that barrier of Seven Wands. Does that make sense? Have you ever noticed for yourself those times when you felt bound, you felt restricted by something, by circumstances, by other people, by your own beliefs, and for a moment you just, perhaps you gave up. You said, okay, either gave up or gave up to your higher self or to God or to whatever creative intelligence you believe that there is in this beautiful universe that we live in. You give ourselves over to that, and suddenly you get this idea or inspiration or impulse to, I think I could go this way, or what about this, or have you had that experience before? That's what this card and this card together are reminding us of. We have this conscious possibility, and it requires consciously opening our hands, unfolding like a lotus blossom. Okay, friends, that was the conscious element of this spread. Let's move on to the unconscious element. Take a look at these cards. For the unconscious element of the spread, for the moon side of the spread, this is where I used the Star Seeker Tarot. Beautiful, new to my collection, new to my library is what I want to say, new to my library of decks. And you saw from top to bottom, we had the Eight of Pentacles, the only pentacle, the only earth of this whole spread. We had the Five of Swords, yet another sword, and we had the Star, another major arcana. And this time, I think I want to start with the Five of Swords, because it echoes, in many ways, the Seven of Wands. Now, it was interesting, right? On the same line, we had, on the very bottom, we had two major arcana, the Devil and the Star. Yeah? Trapping and hope, expansiveness. In the center, we had, surrounding the Seven of Wands, we had on one side the Three of Wands, and on the other side the Five of Swords. Now, what did I want to say about that? Did you notice the Five of Swords? This is different from Pamela Coleman Smith's Five of Swords, and also fives of swords in other decks. Usually what do we see? We usually see another, usually male presenting person, grabbing 3 swords and leaving, I think, another 2 behind. Pamela Coleman Smith, I think, has this thing for leaving 2 behind. Anyways, so grabbing 3 swords, there are 2 on the ground, and there's been some kind of battle, and it seems like this person is collecting the remaining swords. And we think of this as the conflict card, the disagreements card, winning at all costs, or winning but at what cost. Yeah? It could be cunning and corruption sometimes. It could be that Machiavellian card of using mental cunning and conniving to get what we want. It's similar to the Seven of Swords, but different. Now this is actually the full-on battle of the swords, of the Machiavellian strategy. And you notice that in this deck, these form another wall. Different from the art of Pamela Coleman Smith. These swords are stuck in the ground like the 7 wands were stuck in the ground in the Tarot of the Holy Light. And that's what struck me here. And it was interesting, so I looked in the guidebook for this card, and the creator of this deck mentions that this is a wall of miscommunication. Remember, swords are communication suits, right? Miscommunication, misunderstanding, or non-communication. Yeah, the swords are a barrier of communication with other as well. And sometimes unconsciously, when we do feel that block, and perhaps when that Knight of Swords reversed intensity arises within us, sometimes we bait people in order to get them to do things that we can take offense at. Sometimes we want to attack them. But sometimes, unconsciously, we just block ourselves off. We set up a mental block in our unconscious. Have you noticed that? I do that sometimes. When I've come up against a barrier, I don't want to talk about it to other people. I want it to go away, and I unconsciously separate myself from potential help that's out there. I separate myself from my community sometimes. Sometimes more for a longer duration, sometimes for a shorter duration, but I notice that reaction. I also do that when I'm sick. I go into my cave, and I hide, and I cut myself off when I'm sick. Do you ever do that? When you feel an obstacle in front of you, do you ever notice yourself unconsciously cutting yourself off? Like a sword, cutting yourself off from connection, from communication. Unconsciously, we can do that. So what is this deck trying to tell us about that? Well, it's reminding us that we do have hope. It's there. Whether we're aware of it consciously or not, our hope is there. We are creatures of hope. And this hope overcomes that bondage of the devil, whether we're aware of it or not. Even if in the unconscious, our hope can overcome the devil. This is the the star card, the most watery card in this whole spread. Yeah, very similar to other Rider-Waite-Smith-based decks, we see a figure kneeling by or in the water. It looks like she's on the water, if you ask me, pouring water both on land and into the ocean. Now, there's a lot of water in this card. So this is hope, faith, optimism, renewal of self and renewal of purpose to get us around that Seven of Wands. Also spirituality, inspiration, the inspiration that can lead us back onto our path. And it's the card of the visionary. There's a lot of vision in this whole spread, I think. Yeah? The Three of Wands, it's a fire suit, it's a passion, it's an intention suit, but there's also in the 2 and 3 a little bit of vision attached to that. So part of that is our hope that we can keep going forward. So what do we do? What do we do? Well, we can definitely, where am I? Where are you? Oops, I've got the wrong card here. I got the wrong card here. Okay, I pulled out the devil again by mistake. What can we do? We can 8 of Pentacles. Yeah, we can do the work of the 8 of Pentacles. Now, our repetitive task. They may seem repetitive, but until we move around that barrier of the 7 of Wands, doing our daily tasks can distract us, can bring our mind back into focus, actually. That's what I'm trying to say. Not distract us like, oh wow, distracted, but distract us to move our attention from that obstacle to something. And as we focus on our daily tasks, on development of our skills, which is an 8 of Pentacles thing to do, focusing on our natural gifts and our craft, we can bring our mind together, as suggested by that Ace of Swords in reverse. We want to bring our minds together. Squid for brains. We want to bring our minds together into one again. And one way to do that is to focus on our daily tasks, to practice what we're used to. Not being attached to it like the devil. We don't want to be bound to what we've done always and forever. But we also want to bring our attention away from the obstacle to something that can help us center, to come back into alignment. And as we come back to alignment, then we can open to the power of intention and to our own inspiration. To that missing water, perhaps. To that missing intuition, which can help us move around that barrier of the wands. Does that make sense? What do you think? We've still got 2 more cards to look at. We've got the 2 advice cards. Let me show you those. These are lovely cards. Collage! That was the word. And again, I'm usually not a fan of collage, but for some reason, this collage doesn't bother me so much. And on the sun side of the spread, for advice, we had a sun card, right? A sun card. You see the sun? You see the Leo back there? This is the Leo card in this deck. Seize the moment to creatively direct your raw energy. Total Leo statement. And on the moon side, we had this card, looking a little bit moony. I'm sorry, that came out wrong. I'm not talking about the moonies here, but it does have that ethereal, maybe dreamlike quality to it, to me. You got these flowers blooming of this feminine figure, one flower among many. So what does this say at the top or at the bottom? It says discern resonance within. Resonance within. A total moon-like piece of advice, right? So what do we get here? Advice for that conscious side. When we come against that wand, that barrier of wands, and we may feel trapped like the devil. Trapped like the devil. And we may think we have to be cunning and steal what we want to get. We want to take what we think we want. So how do we open into that 3 of Wands, expansiveness? Well, this card is telling us to seize the moment to creatively direct our raw energy, to celebrate life with spontaneity, to take a moment and appreciate and celebrate what is. And maybe find a way to symbolically express what we are feeling at the moment. Whether it's by singing a song, by drawing a picture, by cooking a meal, whatever your creative outlet is, that's a Leo thing to do. I know I'm a Leo. I know because I'm a Leo. Yeah? To symbolically express our inward state, and getting that out into some creative thing can help release a lot of tension. And to remind ourselves that we love life, and that we know how to be happy. We have that in us. We have that star in our unconscious, even though we're not feeling it at the moment. We want to remind ourselves that that star is our essence. And remind ourselves that we love the lives that we are living, that we love life. Whatever our lives are at the moment, that basically we still love life. Or else we'd probably not be here. We'd find a way out. And finding a way out is not necessarily, I'm not suggesting everybody take their own lives when a little bit of trouble comes along. But we also don't want to blame those of us who do take our own lives. Have you known anybody who has committed suicide? Have you found yourself blaming them sometimes? Sometimes we blame people for being sick, for getting some disease and we know that's wrong. Yeah, we know that we shouldn't blame our parents for getting cancer, or for having a heart attack, or for dying of a stroke, or our grandparents. But there's that little bit of us that still wants to put blame on somebody, and sometimes that blame goes on the sick person, whether we want it to or not. And then we start feeling guilty for getting angry at them for getting sick. We don't stop ourselves quite as easily when it's somebody who takes their own lives, which is unfortunate, because it's still, was their only solution that they could come up with at the moment. It was probably the best that they could do. And we don't want to blame people for having a really, really hard time. Just as I think we don't want to blame criminals for the most part. No, I would say for the all part. And that you may, 99.999% of you are probably thinking, what the F are you saying? I don't want to blame a criminal. I want to see a criminal as having a problem, having some kind of dis-ease that is begging for correction, that is begging for treatment. And that's the largest stretch we could take. And this is a really wide tangent, isn't it? So why am I talking about that? Because we want to remind ourselves that we love life. And even a person who has forgotten they've loved life for so long or with such intensity that they decide they want to stop it. Even that person, there was something there that loved life until what we think of as the end. There is no end. The end, and then that love of life becomes apparent again after the transition out of the body. Because we are love. We are love of life, because that's who we are as eternal beings. And we want to remind ourselves of that. And one way to remind ourselves of that is to express creatively what we are feeling at the moment, not burying it down, not trying to pretend it isn't there, not trying to slap a spiritual happy sticker on top of it so we don't see it anymore, but to look at it, perhaps express it enough to move it out of us onto some creative platform, whether it's visual, auditory, singing, music, dance, whatever your jive is. Move it out so that as much as we can, so that we can move on without it. And we can open back up. We all love life. We do. We forget it, but we do. And we want to remind ourselves of that. And then on the unconscious side, how do we, maybe as a support for the conscious side, the unconscious side, discerning resonance within, right? To discern resonance within, we might need to take a moment and rest. Because we can get tired banging up against that Seven of Wands. That can exhaust us. So this card may be reminding us to take a moment to rest, to do the star card action of rest and recuperation and recovery, and then explore what we want to let go of and what is essential for us. Explore our truth being that we love life, for example, and what we want to let go of is our fears and anxieties around the apparent Seven of Wands before us, for example. And let go of the things that might have allowed us to be in a state of attachment and bondage of the devil. We always want to check if the activities we are performing out in the world are in resonance with our inner truth and our desires. And that's that resonance part. On the moon side, on the watery side, we want to check how in alignment what we're doing out in the world is with our truths. However you want to describe that. With our alignment with God, with Source, with higher self. I don't like the word higher self, but with higher self, with the eternal selves that we are. And our own inner being of, and I don't like inner either, but our own unconscious, less conscious self that has manifested in and is co-creating these beautiful bodies that we inhabit. Are we is what we are doing in alignment with that? I notice myself getting out of alignment, especially when I come against a barrier and I start wanting to jog off in the negative Seven of Swords, take what I need to get. That's available, I'm going to take it. That's not in resonance with the truth of who I am. What is really mine will come to me naturally. That's what is in alignment with my truth. Is what you are doing in alignment with your truth, with yourself, the fullness and the minutia of self. So that's our advice. Creatively express. Remember the joy. Rest. Do a little inventory. Self-checking. Is what you're doing really in alignment with who you are? And that will help us get around that Seven of Swords. Or over the Seven of Swords. Or maybe even through the Seven of Swords. Who knows? Water could pass through those seven swords, right? If we're open to the powerful flow of our intention. Now, friends, that was a huge spread, wasn't it? Does it make sense? Am I making sense with this? This is so new for me. I'm not sure how well I'm communicating it to you. If there's a flow through this for you as I'm trying to see it for us. Can you feel it? I'd love to hear what you think about the spread, about the decks, about the way I'm reading it for us. I'd love to hear what you think. So friends, Hit the like button if you're still here. I truly appreciate your coming on this journey with me, this brand new journey with these beautiful new decks. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and hit the alarm bell so you get notifications. Make sure your notifications are turned on. And you can share this too. Yeah, I'm very happy if you share this on another platform so other people might get a chance to see it. And comment below. I would really, really love to hear from you. And if you want a private reading from me, it doesn't have to be this long. I can do a 3-card for you if you want. My email address is below. I've got a brand new method of doing this. My email address is below. Shoot me an email and we can work out a time and a way for you to get a reading from me. And friends, now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.